In this episode of the Rocket Chiro Podcast, we're going to talk about independent contracting and some of the pros and cons. Glad to be with you guys again. Welcome. 1 month of 2021 is officially in the books. On to February, or however you want to say it. One of the things that happened to me when I was in practice, and I'm not 100% sure why this happened, but I think it was a combination of it being toward the beginning of the year and being a short month, but February was always a bad month relative to kind of the rest of the months of the year. It was one of those patterns that I noticed when I was keeping track of stats. The bummer is that my birthday's in February, so it was like it's like the time you're supposed to be, we kind of arbitrarily celebrate, right? Where it's like, oh, it's my birthday, it's supposed to be special. And it was always just one of those months that I was like, this month sucks. It's cold and it's short and it's, so here we are again, another February. We're going to talk about independent contracting, just some stuff that I've noticed over the last several years working with a lot of chiropractors, and a lot of you guys that are just getting started are in a situation where you're independent contracting. But I noticed this several years ago of just this weird thing that I would be talking to a doc and he'd be telling about his situation. And I'm like, wait a second, I thought you were independent contracting. And it's like, yeah. And then they would tell me about these things that were kind of this weird independent contracting hybrid that's really created to be in the best interest of the doctor that you're working with or working for, and not at all for you. So we're just going to talk about just the simple pros and cons, talk about some things to be aware of. I should probably get my notes. What did I do with them? Oh, here they are. I was listening. Oh, wait, no, that's not it. I was listening to a webinar and I was taking notes. I go old school and I write stuff down on pen and paper. So here we go. I got my notes. And so before I get into this, I want to do a couple things. One is, if you're a Next Step member already, I added several new trainings. Basically, I completely updated the Facebook marketing section. It just needed a refresh, needed to be updated. I focused more on concepts than I did specific examples. Couple reasons for that, but I'm not going to go over all of that on the podcast. I just want this to serve as an announcement for those of you who are members already. There's, if you go to the What's New section, you'll see kind of the whole list. I think it's like 8 different videos in the Facebook advertising section. And then there's one, I updated the video in the Facebook referral campaign section. So you can see all that stuff in the membership. If you aren't a member and you want to become one, if you've been listening to the podcast, if you want some help with the business and marketing side of things, then I would love to have you as a member. That's what Next Step is for, is to help you get some of the information you need to kind of deep dive a little bit, but also offer support. I have some members that are just there because they like being able to email me every now and then and ask questions or have me look at something they're working on. And that extra level of contact and support and having somebody there that you can ask for help when you need it is really valuable to some people. Other people are just all about the trainings. They like going through them, and I hardly hear a peep from them. Either way, I think that if you're in a situation where you're wanting to grow your practice, you want to better understand the business and marketing, build that foundation for your practice, and do it in a patient-centered way, do it in a way that is honoring to your people, make a good living, and help a lot of people, and not have to sell the crap out of chiropractic, then Next Step can help you with that, give you some really practical tips you can start using today. So if you go to rocketchiro.com, hit the join now button. I would love to see you there. Look forward to helping you and working together. So independent contracting is one of those things that chiropractors do a lot when they first get started. And you could actually do this for a long time. And there's no rule that says that you can't be an independent contractor out of somebody else's office other than a chiropractor. I mean, you don't have to, because essentially what you're doing is you're just renting space. Now, there are benefits to doing it with another chiropractor, because one of the potential pros is that there's the possibility of using equipment that's already there. And I would say that's actually the biggest pro and the biggest reason why chiropractors would do independent contracting is just the lower cost. So many of you guys, you get out of school, and I don't even know that you should be getting a loan. You know what I mean? Like when I got out of school, it was kind of, everybody was thinking like, okay, that's the the next step is you go get a loan. And I did. A lot of my friends didn't, just because they had bad credit or they just couldn't or whatever. I was always really good with my credit. Growing up, I had one of those old school dads that was like, pay cash for everything and you can have a credit card, but if you can't pay it off, you can't have it. Just the stuff that seemed old and fuddy-duddy at the time. And now I think my dad was a genius. But my dad was Dave Ramsey before Dave Ramsey was Dave Ramsey. And so I was, I had good credit when I went through college and I got out of chiropractic college and started my practice. I had really good credit. And so I got a $100,000 loan and used some of that money kind of foolishly, meaning that in hindsight, that I don't know, there's pros and cons to getting a loan, but I don't know that that's the greatest idea for most chiropractors. But I will tell you this, I don't even know that it matters. A lot of you guys, you don't even have that as an option. It's not like you're sitting around saying, do I take the $100,000 or do I not? You just don't even have the option because banks are being more stingy now than they were even back then. So even if I graduated right now with the same situation that I had before, there's no saying that I would actually get a loan. And it's not like I went to the first bank I went to, by the way, it's not like I went to one bank and then they gave me a loan. I got the dad treatment from most of the banks I went to because I was young. I was 24 years old. And I got a lot of old fuddy-duddy bankers that would cross their arms and give me a look and be like, no, son, what I would do. And I'd be like, listen, I got a dad. I don't need another one. If you're not going to give me the loan, just say so. Like, stop waterboarding me with your dad advice. But eventually, like I said, take a loan. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to start small, you're trying to scale appropriately, or you don't want to add another, however many tens of thousands of dollars of debt onto your already mountain of debt because of going through school, independent contracting is a viable option. And I think that's the main reason. Like you can save money. It's cheaper. It's cheaper to share space with somebody else. It's cheaper to rent a room. It's cheaper to rent half a building. It's cheaper to timeshare with someone where somebody's only there for, a day or two a week and you're there the other time. It's just cheaper. Obviously, if you're working with another chiropractor, there's the possibility of, hiring or using that person's staff at times if you wanted to. And obviously this would all be kind of part of the negotiation. I wouldn't assume that that's part of the gig, but if they have staff that's there that is already doing a lot of the things you want to do, figuring out a way to be able to utilize them is a possibility. Also, sharing equipment or using equipment, especially if you're not there at the same time, therapy, stuff like that. Those are all perks that could be part of independent contracting, but aren't necessarily. In its purest form, independent contracting is you're just renting a room. I mean, that's kind of its purest form. And I don't think there's a lot of downside to doing that. There is one big, ugly, fat, hairy downside, and that is it just destroys your SEO. Like if you want to rank in the Google Maps, like in the 3-pack, if you want to show up high in the organic listings, et cetera, more so the local maps listing than anything else, but it just kills your SEO. Google doesn't like it. And you could come up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. You could talk to Google about it. You could have a conversation about how like you're two separate businesses in the same place and blah, blah, blah. But Google doesn't like it. And when Google doesn't like it, it's a really tough road to hoe as far as going, doing your SEO. And I think that's the biggest downside. And so can you make it worse? Yes, you absolutely can. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about the weird hybrid that I've seen that has popped up. And this wasn't around when I was younger. This is something that I never even knew about until I started doing the Black Sheep, which is now Rocket Chiro, and started actually talking to chiropractors, young chiropractors now. But one of the things I'm seeing is this weird hybrid where young chiropractors are in a position where they say they're an independent contractor and they work on they work on like a percentage, and they are treated like employees. It's weird. Like, it's really weird. The kicker is, though, there's when it's really bad, you're not allowed to have, you don't have your own online presence. You don't have your own social media, your own business listing. You essentially wear like you're a company man, like you wear the shirt and the logo and the whatnot of the actual company that you're independent contracting with. You don't get paid a salary. And then you have to follow all the rules of the office, just like an employee. That's a terrible situation, because what's happening in those situations, and like I was going to say trifecta, but I've mentioned more than 3 things. The absolute kick in the nether regions is on top of it if they happen to make you sign like a no compete clause, where it's like, what is this? Like, what in the world are we talking about? This is like the idea, the whole, like, it's only 2 words, independent contractor, like independent being the leading word. It's like, you're not independent at all. If you're doing that, you're not independent. You are supposed to be 2 separate entities. You're supposed to be 2 separate things. And now it doesn't mean that one can't refer to the other. I mean, even if you're 2 chiropractors, it's entirely possible that there could be overflow from one to the other, or for you to them. Like, that's possible. It's possible that can be part of the arrangement, where if they refer to you, that there's some sort of, whatever. I don't even know. I mean, obviously you have to check your local areas. I'm not telling you to break any laws, but those things could possibly be that. But the arrangement really should be, as an independent contractor, is that you have a renter-rentee relationship with the doctor that's in your office. That's it. I mean, I had a landlord the whole time I was in practice. At no point did he tell me to wear the company shirt. It's like, at no point did he come in and say, like, you have to dress a certain way. You have to be here a certain number of hours. You have to pay me a percentage of the money that you make. If you open up another business anywhere around here, you have to, he owned multiple of these little strip mall places. You have to open up in one of my places, which is like, it's a made up thing, but all I'm saying is it's stupid rules that someone would have been putting on me that have no authority to do that. Like, why in the world would I agree to that? Now, I will say this. If you're in a situation like that, where you're working in another clinic, you have to wear the company shirt, but the clinic is feeding you patients. And I don't even know why they would do that. I do know that those things exist. But if they're feeding you patients, then maybe there's something to that. It's still just weird. It's a really weird situation. And this is what it should look like. What it should look like is this. Whether you have a practice name or not, you are not part of the practice in which you are independent contracting out of. Like, if you could be listed as a business as your own name. I'll use my name as an example. So that would just be Dr. Jerry Kennedy. So if I didn't have a practice name, Kennedy Chiropractic or whatever you want to call it, Rocket Chiropractic, that would obviously be my practice name. And so if Rocket Chiropractic wasn't something I wanted to do because I was functioning in somebody else's practice and for whatever reason I hadn't decided on a name or whatever, then I could have Dr. Jerry Kennedy listed as in Google as a business. It would have an independent website, drjerrykennedy.com. It would have independent phone number. My phone number would be different. The more stuff you share with this existing business, the more it kills your SEO. So if you say, I'm an independent contractor, and you're going to have the same exact address, which you will, the same exact phone number, which you shouldn't, but I've seen it, the same exact website, which is mind-boggling to me, like why that happens, but I've seen it. And then you're going to tell Google that, like, no, we're not the same company. We're different. Google looks at you and rolls their eyes. Not that Google has eyes, but maybe they do. Does Google have eyes? They're watching you. So that's crazy to me. You should have a separate look about you. You should have a separate phone number. And even if the front staff, still you're doing something where the front desk staff, when they're there, they're helping you schedule appointments, just like they help the other doc, you should still have a separate phone, like a separate number coming in. They should know when that phone rings, when the bat phone rings. You guys don't know what I'm talking about, right? When I say the bat phone, that just makes me old. for those of you who are old that are listening, the red phone that was the bat phone that's not in the new movie. So that just makes me old. But when the bat phone rings, they should know it's yours. And if the staff isn't helping you out, that should go to your cell phone or your number or whatever that happens to be. And then you would know, or your staff person that you hire would know that you're answering that for your business. So it's different website, different business phone number. The only thing that would be the exact same would be the address. That's it. That's what you are as an independent contractor. And it's still going to hurt your SEO. It's still going to really do numbers on your SEO. But at least in that sense, people can leave reviews on Facebook. People can leave reviews on your Google My Business profile. You have a chance, at least at that point, to distinguish yourself. And even though your SEO may kind of stink as long as you're under the same roof as somebody else, if you're doing this the way you should be doing it, then when you decide to leave, or let's say you move from one business to another, you independent contract out of one person's business, now you independent contract out of that one over there, or a space opens up that you can afford because you've grown into it or grown out of the space that you're at, you can transition over and you've already started establishing your online footprint. You've already started establishing your online presence. That's what's supposed to happen. Instead, what I see is these chiropractors who are independent contracting, and that's totally 100% air quoted because they're not actually doing that. And they're wearing the company shirt. They have their face on the staff website. They don't get patients from the office. They pay a percentage or something to the doctor. They get no salary. They have no Google My Business profile. They have no Facebook profile, no Instagram account, nothing like that. It's an absolute total, you're getting screwed is what's happening. You're absolutely getting screwed. So what should you do if you're an independent contractor and any of that stuff sounds like the situation you're in? You should immediately start separating yourself as much as possible. And if they're not allowing you to separate yourself, get out of that situation as soon as possible, unless they're feeding you people and there's some sort of reason why they are. I mean, they may call it independent contractor. If they're paying you a salary and stuff like that, you're not an independent contractor. You're an employee. So if you want to be tethered to your brass handcuffs, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily, to make a small salary because that's comforting for you right now, but you still need to have an exit plan. And if you are in the situation like that and you don't have a website, you don't have a Google My Business profile, you haven't done anything like that to separate yourself, you got to start doing that. You got to distinguish yourself from the place that you're in. Otherwise, you're not an independent contractor and you're losing all the benefits of being an independent contractor. You're in this weird employee position where it's not a good spot. It's not a good position to be in. So what are the pros? I mean, the pros are it saves you money. It saves you money and it buys you some time, and you can be smart about where you're spending your money and you can scale appropriately. But if you are just locked in and tethered to someone like an employee, but worse than an employee because you're not getting a salary or anything else, that's a terrible situation to be in, and you're not setting yourself up for a good spot long term. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. That's another episode of the Rocket Chiro Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to join Next Step, like I said, go to rocketchiro.com and hit the join now button. I'd love to see you in the membership area. I'll be back again next time. I will talk to you guys then. See ya.